Hey everybody, Bolt to the Bus. It's JJ. It's September 30th, 2020. Welcome to the final day in September. And the fourth quarter is up on us, tomorrow being October 1st. Well, I will talk about the debate. Everybody's talking about the debate. I'll talk about that a little bit later. As you probably have guessed, I didn't hear anything that I wanted to hear out of the debate. I feel that the most important topics of today were being ignored and looked over. But let's get into some news and we'll talk about that. The Dow Jones up 300 points on stimulus hope. Now, how pitiful, how sad is it that the stock market has to wait for hope of free money being created out of thin air, handed out to the American people who, most of them are broke, living paycheck to paycheck. Millions of people facing eviction and foreclosure if it weren't for the moratoriums and the assistance programs. And think about this, March of this year we had the shutdowns because of the illness, and September actually was the first losing month for the stock market, for the Dow Jones rather, since the initial month of the shutdown. So amidst the worst unemployment since the Great Depression, only 2 months where the stock market wasn't positive, and that was at the beginning back in March, and that was this month, September. Now we're going to talk about a very well-known investor who predicts a crash very shortly. So he thinks that the string is about ready to pop, or rather the clock is about ready to expire or go past the point of whatever the goal is for the manipulators to keep this propped up. And we know that there's bubbles everywhere. We're going to talk about that investor predicting an economic crash, not inflation but deflation. And this particular investor went to mostly cash, almost all cash. Okay, but what is this hope, this stimulus hope that pushed the markets up today? Well, it was basically one word, one word out of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Let's look at what word it was. Another CNBC article. Mnuchin says he is hopeful White House and Democrats can strike a deal, a stimulus deal. So the word was hopeful. Mnuchin said he is hopeful, so the markets are up based on that. I mean, how pitiful is that, where we have to sit there and listen to known fraudsters, and they say one word, the word's hopeful, and that pushes the markets up. Are you serious? Do you really think the actual investors are buying on hearing this word out of Mnuchin? Or is it funny money created out of nothing that's pumped into this market? And you notice how you don't hear about QE anymore. QE 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was going to be 5. Well, pretty much everybody knows that it's QE to infinity now. And the central bankers, they came out and said it. It's unlimited. They said they're going to do whatever it takes to keep these markets propped up. But not everyone feels like they're going to keep it propped up forever. Let's take a look at this economic crash prediction from this article right here with Clem Chambers of Investors Hub. And he thinks the clock is about up. The bubbles that are being propped up, that are being inflated with unlimited fiat money, and he doesn't come out and exactly say what he thinks is going to prick the bubble, but you know that the timing with what's happening with the situation right now, what's coming up in November, has to play an important role in it. So he says even gold is going to deflate, and of course the stock market, he says, is going to come down, and he is actually in all cash right now. So check out that interview if you want to hear his prediction. But if you've been on this channel, it's no surprise to hear such a prediction. We know that there's usually time limits and certain goals and certain dates where they try to keep things looking good, keep things looking like they're functional before they'll let it come collapsing down. And in this case, a crash could be right around the corner, right? And you always hear could be, should be, would be. Why is that? Well, that's because it's all manipulated, because something should happen, because prices are overinflated, because prices are too high. It doesn't mean that it can't go higher. So you're never going to hear someone give an exact date. It's impossible, because when manipulation is done behind the curtain, unless you're in direct contact with the manipulators, there's no way to know for sure. Right? So this is where we're at. This is the sad reality of our economy. It's all manipulated. You just have to guess what the manipulators are going to do to try to figure out where you should put your money, how to invest, and how to prepare. Right? And I know most of you that I read in comments, you're onto this All right, so check out that interview if you're interested. It's Clem Chambers from Investors Hub. And I know you've heard over several years people predicting crashes. If you've been on this channel, you know we've been predicting they're going to keep it propped up and the bubbles are going to get bigger. Now, a lot of it depends on what happens in November. But even if the markets don't crash, there's a lot of things happening right now in this country. It's almost to the point where there's going to be a civil war because there's such a divide in this country right now. And I think a lot of it is planned to distract people from what's really happening with this economic system. I've talked about that many times. Let's talk about some recent layoff news. Report here, article out of Bloomberg. One day, thousands of job cuts. The economic pain is deepening. And they talk about, they highlight here Disney laying off 28,000 workers. And the weekly new jobless report, that's going to be out tomorrow, Thursday. I'm guessing it's going to be at least another 800,000 because of layoffs and cuts like this. Things are not really improving. If you look at the manipulated numbers, you could say things are getting less worse, but when you look at the real numbers, like we talked about in our previous report, the labor force participation rate and other indicators that are more accurate, we know that the economy is just being bailed out right now and being manipulated to make it look like there's this amazing recovery. All right, and that includes, of course, the stock market manipulation. Other recent news, job cuts out of Goldman Sachs. And we have also reported here recently there's some other banks that are also cutting jobs. Do these banks see something on the horizon? Do they know that time is running short, that the string could be about to pop? What do these banks know? Do they know that time is running short, that the bubbles are maybe reaching the expiration dates? It's possible. All right, let me know what you think down below, please, on the time frames for this. Are we going to see this let go after November? And is it going to be a deflationary crash or collapse? All right, now let's talk about the debate. They really shouldn't call these debates because sometimes the questions are so narrow and so specific that they never get around to even talking or debating about real cures for this sick system, the sick economy. Right? I didn't hear any talk about the national debt, the spending, the bubbles that are being propped up right now. I did hear some bragging out of the stock market, bragging about the stock market out of the president. Right? But no one talked about the unleashed banks, the fractional reserve system where banks can now loan out as much money as they want to without having to have a certain amount in reserves. Right, the bubbles, the millions of people facing evictions and foreclosures if it were not for the moratoriums, the growing homeless situation, the fact that we need stimulus checks, and the word hopeful is enough to prop up the markets because people are hopeful that the broke people will get more stimulus checks sent out to them. All right, pretty sad. It's a choice between bad and worse. I think you know my views on this when it comes to this political situation right now. But in this case, the choice for, if you choose worse rather than bad, it could be a lot worse. And I'm talking about the loss of basic freedoms, and a topic for another day and another place. But thanks everybody for watching this report. Love you. Stay well, stay prepared, stay safe. Peace.